The street had fallen silent long before Silas Ward realized something was wrong. He had been guiding his weary horse toward the trough, thinking about the $3 in his pocket and whether they would stretch until his next job, when the stillness struck him like a blow. Doors slammed shut, curtains fell across darkened windows, and even the old hound that usually slept outside the saloon vanished into the shadows. The town had folded itself inward as if refusing to watch what was about to unfold. That was when he saw her. An Apache girl stood in the center of the dusty street, her dress worn from travel, her hands trembling though she never moved. 3 men circled her, quiet as vultures biding their time. She didn't look at them, not once. Her gaze stayed fixed on the ground, lips shaping words no one else could hear. Silas had seen plenty of odd things in frontier towns, but this felt different. Wrong. The men didn't jeer or shout, didn't lay a hand on her. They just waited, savoring the moment like hunters certain their prey had no escape. He recognized one of them instantly, Clyde Baxter, owner of half the town's businesses and a man who never bothered to hide his hatred of anyone who didn't mirror his face or share his creed. At his side stood Amos Rollins and another stranger, both carrying themselves with the smug confidence of men who had never tasted consequence. Then Baxter stepped forward. Something small and metallic caught the light in his palm, a sharp glint that froze the girl where she stood. Her whispering ceased. The silence deepened, pressing down on the street until even Silas felt it in his chest. "Now you remember, don't you?" Baxter's voice broke the air. At that moment, the girl lifted her head. Her eyes met Silas's across the distance, and what he saw rooted him to the spot. It wasn't fear staring back at him. It was recognition, deliberate, expectant, as if she had been waiting for him to be there to witness whatever came next. And Silas knew then, this was no chance encounter. Someone had arranged every piece of this moment. But why, and why did it demand an audience of him? Her hands shook faintly at her sides, yet she stood rooted to the spot, as though bound by rules only she understood, or by a force none of them could see. There was intention in her stillness, a quiet obedience to something invisible. Baxter stepped closer. From his vest pocket, he drew a small object that caught the sunlight like a blade, silver perhaps. Whatever it was, the effect on the girl was immediate. Her lips froze mid-whisper, the words cut off. The silence deepened until even the air seemed to hold its breath. "Now you remember, don't you?" Baxter's voice rolled across the street, clear and cruel. The girl raised her head. Her gaze drifted past Baxter, locking onto Silas across the distance. The look in her eyes made his blood run cold. Not fear, but recognition. As if she had expected him to be there. As if his presence had been planned. Silas glanced down the deserted street at the bolted doors and shuttered windows. The whole town had made its choice to pretend this wasn't happening. But the girl's eyes told him he no longer had that luxury. She was silently telling him this was his burden now. Baxter's tone dropped, low and threatening. The girl nodded slowly, as if sealing an agreement she couldn't refuse. "You'll come with us quietly," Baxter ordered. "No screaming, no running, no whispering to anyone about what you think you saw." He lifted the metal higher, letting it flash like a warning. "Because if you do, everyone will know exactly what this means." The girl's face drained of color, but she nodded again. And in that moment, Silas understood this wasn't some passing cruelty. It was deliberate, calculated. The object in Baxter's hand wasn't just a weapon, it was evidence. Evidence of something already done. His horse snorted and stamped, the sharp sound ricocheting through the empty street like a shot. All 4 heads turned toward him. Baxter's expression soured when he recognized the cowboy. "Ward," he said, voice flat with warning, "this doesn't concern you." Silas had spent his life avoiding men like Baxter, drifting job to job, keeping his head down, surviving by never drawing attention. Poor cowboys didn't make enemies of powerful men. But when he looked at the girl, at the resignation pulling down her shoulders, something shifted inside him. Words left his mouth before he could stop them. "Seems to me it concerns everyone," Silas said, seeing as the whole town's hiding behind their curtains. Baxter's smile was thin and venomous. "Smart men know when to mind their own business. And you always struck me as smart, Ward." The girl's eyes found Silas again. This time he saw it clearly. Desperation, raw and pleading, barely contained. She wasn't pleading. Ayanna Baxter didn't look like the type who begged. The desperation in her eyes was different. The kind that comes when all the doors are shut and you're left choosing between bad and worse. "What's in your hand, Baxter?" Silas asked, nudging his horse a step closer. "Nothing that concerns a drifter who can barely keep himself fed," Baxter sneered. But as Silas closed the distance, more details revealed themselves. The girl's dress was torn at the shoulder, the fabric frayed fresh. Her moccasins were worn to near nothing, yet her feet were too clean. She hadn't been walking far. And then he saw it, a thin red welt around her throat. Rope burn. Faint but unmistakable. Someone had already tried to hang her. Baxter didn't even glance at the girl when he spoke next. "Tell our friend you're coming with us of your own free will." For the first time, her voice cut through the silence. Barely more than a whisper, but sharp enough to carry across the street. "Don't talk." She wasn't warning Baxter. She was repeating something drilled into her. Words beaten into her with enough force to leave scars. And in that moment, Silas understood. He wasn't witnessing the end of her ordeal. He was standing at the beginning of something far worse. He swung down from his saddle slowly, every move deliberate, careful not to spook the wolves circling their prey. But his mind was racing. The rope mark, the way Baxter clutched that metal object like it was proof. The town shuddered into silence, complicit by absence. The pieces were arranging themselves into a picture he didn't want to see. "She's already told us everything we need to know," Baxter drawled, voice smooth, almost casual, and more menacing for it. "Haven't you, Ayanna?" Her answer came soft, almost broken. "Don't talk." "That's right," Baxter purred. "Don't talk about what you saw at the ranch. Don't talk about who was there. Don't talk about what happened to the others." His smile widened, jagged and cruel. "Smart girls know when to keep their mouths shut. The others." A chill clawed at Silas's chest. This wasn't about one girl. This was about covering something bigger, something that required silence. Final silence. "Problem is," Baxter continued, eyes never leaving Silas, "we can't be entirely sure she understands the importance of staying quiet. Apache girls can be unreliable." Amos Rollins shifted uneasily. "Baxter, maybe we should just what?" Baxter snapped, his voice cracking like a whip. "Let her wander around town telling stories. Let her draw eyes we don't want. Questions we don't need." Silas saw it then, the cold calculation in Baxter's gaze. He wasn't improvising. He was deciding, measuring outcomes, and none of them ended well for Ayanna, because the rope mark on her neck, it wasn't from a failed hanging. It was a warning. A rehearsal. It was a warning. No clumsy afterthought, but a demonstration of what would happen if she didn't obey. "What did she see, Baxter?" Silas asked, easing his horse forward until he could see the metal flash in Baxter's palm. "Nothing that concerns you, Ward." "Nothing that concerns anyone if folks are smart about it," Baxter replied, voice low and oily. Ayanna watched Silas now with a look that wasn't hope and wasn't despair. It was a quick animal assessment, measuring threat, measuring opportunity, trying to decide which he was, predator or something else. "You've already seen too much," Baxter said, dropping his tone to a conversational whisper. "Just by standing here asking questions, you've made this complicated." The third man, quiet until then, stepped closer. His hand hovered by his pistol like a promise. "So you got a choice," Baxter continued. "Walk away now and forget you ever saw a thing." His sentence trailed off, the alternative hanging in the thin red welt around Ayanna's throat and in the empty windows of the town that had turned its back. Silas looked at Ayanna one more time. She mouthed two words so softly he almost missed them. "Help me." In that instant, the drifter in him, cowboy by trade, trouble avoider by habit, made a decision that would change everything. "I reckon I'll be taking the girl with me," Silas said, voice steady. His hand moved to rest on his own weapon. Baxter laughed then, a harsh, humorless sound. "You reckon wrong, Ward. This girl's coming with us to answer questions about stolen property." "Horses?" Silas asked. "What property?" "3 horses took from my ranch 3 nights back," Baxter said, smooth as a rehearsed lie. "She was seen by the corral." But Silas heard the lie in the cadence, the too clean delivery, too ready a story. If Ayanna had stolen horses, she wouldn't be barefoot in thin moccasins, her dress torn at the shoulder. She'd be riding them out of town. "If she stole your horses," Silas said, stepping closer, "where are they now?" Baxter's smile hardened. "That's what we're going to find out by hanging her from the nearest tree." The words dropped like a gauntlet. Baxter's face shadowed, and for a breath he didn't deny it. He couldn't, not with the rope mark scrawled across her throat. "You're making a mistake, Ward," Baxter said. "A big one." Silas moved like a man who'd thought hard and fast. He reached out, slow and deliberate, and offered his hand to Ayanna. Her eyes flicked from him to Baxter and back, weighing the odds. Then she stepped forward and her fingers brushed his palm, a touch small as a promise. The contact seemed to loosen whatever had frozen the street. Amos Rollins lunged for his gun, but Silas was quicker. He pulled Ayanna behind him and drew his own piece in one clean motion. "Nobody has to die here today," Silas said. The words even though his heart hammered. "Just let us walk away." "Can't do that, Ward," Baxter said, voice tight now. "Too much at stake." More than one girl saw what she shouldn't have. His eyes narrowed, and the air around them grew thin with the calculation of a man who'd already decided outcomes. "I know someone tried to string her up to keep her quiet," Silas said, voice steady but hard. "I know the whole town scattered the moment you stepped into the street. And I know that little piece of metal in your hand sure as hell isn't evidence of stolen horses." For the first time, Baxter's mask cracked. Doubt flickered across his face. He hadn't expected pushback. He'd counted on fear. He'd counted on Silas backing down like everyone else had learned to do. "What is it, Baxter?" Silas pressed. "What did she see that's worth killing for?" "Last chance." Baxter's jaw tightened. "Ward, walk away." Behind Silas, Ayanna's hand clutched at his shirt, urgent, trying to warn him, but he couldn't risk taking his eyes off Baxter long enough to read the message. That's when he heard it, the dull rhythm of boots on wood. Men stepped from shadowed doorways that only seconds ago had seemed abandoned. 6 in all, fanning into the street, their boots stirring up dust. They moved with practiced ease, closing off every escape like a noose tightening. Silas counted 5 pistols, 1 shotgun. The odds had just turned impossible. "You see, Ward," Baxter said, his swagger returning with reinforcements at his back. "This town understands the value of cooperation. When someone threatens our way of life, we handle it together." Ayanna pressed close behind Silas, trembling. But when she spoke, her voice was clear, cutting through the silence like a knife. "They killed my cousin," she said. "Shot him when he tried to run." The words hit Silas like a blow to the gut. Not theft, murder. She hadn't been a thief, she'd been a witness. "Shut up," Baxter snapped, civility stripped from his tone, venom raw now. But Ayanna wasn't stopping. The dam had broken. Mesa saw the brand on the cattle. He knew they weren't yours. When he confronted you for stealing from Apache lands, "You lie," Baxter snarled. "Your cousin was a horse thief and a liar." "No," Ayanna said, stronger now, her voice carrying. "Mesa was honest. That's why you killed him. That's why you tried to kill me. Because we knew you were stealing cattle and burning the brands." The pieces locked together in Silas's mind. Cattle rustling, a witness silenced, another meant to follow, and a whole town too cowed by Baxter's reach to do a damn thing about it. "The girl's confused," Baxter barked, turning to the men who surrounded them. "Grief makes people foolish." But Silas caught it, the hesitation in some of the townsmen's faces. They'd signed up to rough up a drifter, not cover a killing. "Where's Mesa's body?" Silas asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Buried proper. Like any Christian," Baxter shot back. "Where?" Silas pressed. "That's not your concern." Ayanna's voice rang clear, stronger than before. "No grave. They burned him. Scattered his ashes in the river so his spirit couldn't find peace." A younger man at the edge of the group lowered his gun, just slightly, and Silas knew the truth was beginning to seep through the cracks. "Baxter, you didn't mention murder," Silas said, voice flat. "You said nothing about killing. The girl's lying." "Then why does everyone clear out when she opens her mouth? Why is everyone so scared of hearing what she knows?" Ayanna looked Baxter straight in the face. "Mesa wasn't the only one," she said. "They killed 3 others who asked questions about the missing cattle. Burned them all." Her words fell into the hush like stones, and even the wind seemed to stop to listen. Silas felt the shape of it then. Why Baxter wanted her silent. Why the town had folded up like a frightened animal. This wasn't a single brutal act or simple rustling. It was a campaign of terror. A method to keep people quiet by making them afraid for their lives. The question now was whether fear outweighed conscience. The young townsman who'd challenged Baxter staggered back, face drained of color. 4 people? He whispered. "I didn't kill anyone," Baxter spat, but his voice came out thin, defensive. These Apaches come onto our land, steal livestock, make wild accusations when caught. Another man tried to patch the lie with reason. Sometimes things escalate to murder, he offered, uncertainty in his tone. Silas watched the support for Baxter crumble like a poorly stacked fence. These weren't hired killers out for blood. They were shopkeepers and clerks who'd been told they were keeping order, not hiding a series of murders. Baxter barked for the crowd to hush. Don't listen to her lies, he said, but the command had lost its edge. Let her talk, Silas said. Let her tell the territorial marshal. If she's lying, the truth will show itself. There won't be any marshal, Baxter said, cold and final. This ends here. Ayanna stepped from behind Silas as if the street itself had given her permission. I can prove it, she declared. Mesa hid evidence before they got him. Pieces of original brands cut from the stolen cattle, letters that list who lost livestock and when. At that, Baxter went white. Hard proof could topple not just a rustlin' ring, but the murders used to hide it. Where? He demanded. Safe place, Ayanna said. Somewhere you'll never find it. Tell me where, or I'll make sure your death takes days instead of minutes. Baxter's threat hung naked in the hot air. Two men exchanged guilty glances. The gravity of what they'd been recruited for was sinking in. Silas let Baxter stew a beat before he spoke, calm as a man who'd weighed every option. Funny thing, Baxter, he said, conversational, dangerous. All this time you could have let her leave. You could have counted on fear like the rest of them. Instead, you got greedy. Shut up, Ward, Baxter snapped. Now you've got witnesses to your threats. Half the town's heard murder and evidence. Even if you kill us both, you can't kill everyone listening. Baxter's eyes swept the ring of men. Silas saw the math being run behind that glare. How many could be relied on? How many would need silencing? The operation had grown beyond Baxter's neat control. And Mesa was clever, Ayanna added quietly. He left instructions. If anything happened to him, others would know where to find the proof. It sounded like a bluff. Silas heard the tremor, but it was a good bluff. Uncertainty gnawed at Baxter. He tried to cry foul. You're lying, he said, but the conviction had left his voice. Maybe, Silas said, and leveled his gaze at the men around them. But are you willing to bet your life on that? Because that's what you're doing. Every man you've killed, every family you've threatened, Silas said, his voice carrying in the dead quiet street. They all have friends, people who remember, people who start asking questions when evidence turns up. For the first time since this began, a flicker of fear crossed Baxter's face, and then the first shot cracked through the silence. It hadn't come from Baxter or his men. The report echoed from above, from the second-story window of the general store. Baxter spun around, confusion flashing across his features as a new voice cut through the dust. That's far enough. Clyde. Sheriff Morrison stepped onto the balcony, rifle leveled at the knot of men below. Two more figures appeared behind him, faces Silas knew. The territorial marshal and his deputy, in town longer than anyone had guessed. You boys can lower your weapons now, Morrison called. This here's federal jurisdiction. Relief rippled through the ring of armed townsmen. One by one, holsters swallowed pistols. They hadn't signed up to cover murder, and authority offered them a way out. But Clyde Baxter wasn't finished. His hand twitched toward his revolver, desperate, reckless. Don't, Silas warned, his own weapon unwavering. Baxter froze, hand hovering inches from steel. His voice cracked with something between defiance and pleading. You don't understand what you've done, Ward. This town needs order. These people need protection. From what? Silas asked coldly. From Apache trying to reclaim their stolen cattle? From chaos, Baxter snapped. From lawlessness. From people who don't understand how things work out here. The marshal descended the steps, his deputy covering the crowd. His voice was calm, certain. Clyde Baxter, you're under arrest for the murders of Mesa Crowfeather and at least 3 other Apache men. You can't prove a damn thing, Baxter snarled. Actually, we can. The marshal closed the distance. We've been investigating for weeks. Found your altered brands, traced your sales, identified your buyers. All we needed was a witness. Ayanna stepped forward, her voice steady now, stronger than it had been since Silas first saw her in the street. Mesa did hide evidence, but he also sent letters, detailed records to the territorial government before he died. He knew what was coming. Baxter's face crumpled, his certainty collapsing under the weight of the inevitable. The girl he'd tried so desperately to silence had never been his only problem. The net had already closed. All that remained was the fall. "You set this up," Baxter hissed, staring at Silas with venom. "No," Silas said, lowering his gun at last. "You did." "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time," Silas said. "Sometimes that's all it takes." The marshal stepped forward with irons, but Baxter wasn't finished. With a last burst of desperation, he lunged for Ayanna. Whether to take her hostage or drag her into his escape, Silas never knew. He never got the chance. Silas fired once. The shot struck Baxter in the shoulder, spinning him hard and dropping him to the dust. He writhed, clutching the wound. His reign of terror ended not by law or wealth, but by a poor drifter who'd finally chosen to stand. "It's over," the marshal declared, his voice carrying to every doorway and shuttered window. "Justice will be served under territorial law." For the first time and longer than anyone could remember, the town exhaled. 3 days later, Silas sat on the boarding house porch, watching Ayanna carefully wrap the fresh bandage on his shoulder. The bullet had passed through clean, and though the ache lingered, he found himself grateful for the time it gave him to pause. Baxter sat in the territorial jail now, awaiting trial for 4 murders and a long list of thefts. Mesa's evidence had proven exhaustive. Records of stolen cattle, forged brands, names of buyers. Other Apache witnesses, once too afraid, had begun to step forward. The truth was out. "The marshal says they'll need me to testify," Ayanna said. Her voice was stronger now, her English clear and confident. Fear had hidden more than her words. It had hidden her sharp mind, her education, her fire. "Will you be safe traveling to the capital?" "Safe enough. Mesa's friends will ride with me." And the marshal promised protection until the trial. She tied the knot in the bandage, then looked at him. "What about you?" Silas rolled his shoulder, wincing at the sting but feeling something he hadn't known in years. "Purpose. Sheriff Morrison offered me a deputy badge. Says the town could use someone who knows the difference between keeping the peace and keeping people scared." Ayanna's brow lifted. "Will you take it?" "Already did." He looked down the street where it had all begun. Shops open, people moving freely, children laughing in the dust. For the first time it felt like a town again, and for the first time Silas Ward felt like he belonged.